Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for James Cameron's Avatar, which came out in 2009 and was his first mainstream feature film in 12 years. Now think about that for a second. James Cameron has made some incredible movies, including two of the greatest sequels of all time. And yet, after Titanic, the movie that was the first to make $1 billion worldwide, gained 11 Academy Awards, including 3 for Cameron himself, he waits 12 years to make his next feature film. That really puts into perspective of how big the anticipation was for this at the time. Anyway, the movie takes place in the year 2154. We follow an ex-Marine, played by Sam Worthington, named Jake Sully. He is paralyzed from the waist down and bound to a wheelchair. He is soon sent to the moon of Pandora, which orbits the gas giant Polyphemus in the Alpha Centauri A system. And people say no one remembers Avatar. Anyway, moving on, he is sent to Pandora in place of his twin brother Tom, who was a scientist that was supposed to go to Pandora, but unfortunately he was robbed and murdered before being sent off. Jake Sully is being sent there to pilot this genetically engineered body called an avatar, which is supposed to look like the local population on Pandora, the Na'vi. However, upon his arrival, he's not really treated with any respect by the head of the Avatar program, Dr. Grace Augustine, played by Sigourney Weaver. And on top of that, he's actually being used as a tool by the RDA, a mining company whose sole purpose on Pandora is to mine for this very valuable mineral called unobtainium. The head of the RDA, played by Giovanni Ribisi, and the leader of their security detachment, Colonel Miles Quaritch, played by Stephen Lang, order Jake Sully to basically get to know the local Na'vi tribe, the Omaticaya clan, because their home sits on the biggest and closest unobtainium deposit. However, after months of spending time with the Na'vi tribe, learning their ways, getting to know the world of Pandora through their eyes, and especially after forming a bond with the chief's daughter, Neytiri, played by Zoe Saldaña, Jake ultimately has to make a difficult decision. Does he stay with the local Na'vi tribe and become one of them with actual functioning legs? Or does he get the money to get his legs back, his real legs, and then get shipped back home to that shithole of a planet Earth? Words cannot describe how big of a deal this movie was back in 2009. I mean, sure, people nowadays will say, well, Avatar held no cultural impact, it's terrible, yada yada yada, but I'm not here to talk about that. I already did a whole video regarding those criticisms. But back then, it was a monumental event film. It was James Cameron's first movie in 12 years. There was such a big deal about the new 3D technology. The trailers made it look like the greatest thing ever. And there's a reason why this movie made the money that it did. And for me personally, Avatar holds the record for being the movie I have seen the most times in theaters. I've seen it a total of 7 times, 5 in its original theatrical run, with 2 of them being in IMAX. The 6th time was back in the summer of 2010 after the extended version was released in theaters for 2 weeks, and then just this past September, my 7th time seeing it in theaters was the 4K remastered edition. I still even have the Art of Avatar book that came out back in 2009, as well as the Activist Survival Guide, which pretty much is a fictional guide to the world of Pandora and just everything surrounding it. So clearly this movie had a huge impact on me, not to mention that it was the first James Cameron movie I saw in theaters. And I still love the movie, but I will admit, I don't love this movie as much as I did when I first saw it in 2009. I do legitimately believe that this movie has been unfairly criticized throughout the years, because it seems like people just seem to be focusing on the bad stuff and not really talking about the stuff that really makes this movie as good as it is. The real reason you see this movie is, of course, because of the way it looks. It is just a beautiful movie to look at. The CG is spectacular. The motion capture broke new grounds, and like I said in my video about why you should give The Way of Water a chance, without this groundbreaking motion capture technology, we wouldn't have gotten characters like Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, or Thanos, or Caesar from the Planet of the Apes trilogy, or Supreme Leader Snoke from the first 2 Star Wars sequel films. And there are several nuances to the way these characters move, the facial expressions that they make, and really goes to show that motion capture is enhanced by visual effects, sure, but it's all done through acting, and there's really no excuse for why this type of performance gets snubbed by the Academy Awards. And on top of the way this movie looks, James Cameron really created a brand new world. There's no other movie that I can think of that goes into such depth with the science fiction as Avatar does. Take a look at any of the Star Wars movies. When you look at the planets in those films, there's really not a whole lot of exploring in them, and the characters seem to be in just one tiny spot on said planet, and you just assume the rest of the planet looks the way that this particular location does, like Hoth or Endor, Tatooine. This movie really goes into the depth of Pandora, its ecosystem, how the Na'vi tribe live, their customs, the wildlife, the small detail that each of the animals except the Na'vi are hexapods. It is so crazy how detailed this movie is in terms of its world building. It's so detailed in terms of building this world that Pandora itself ends up being a major character in the film. When I hear people criticize this movie for not having any interesting characters, or you don't really care about anyone, Pandora is very much a character in its own. When all the bad stuff starts to happen in this movie, it hits me emotionally because you love this world so much that it's just tragic to see anything bad happen to it and to see the humans trash it the way they do. Now, that being said, I did not suffer through Avatar depression the way so many people did back in 2009 when they first saw the movie, but it is effective enough to get an emotional response out of me. As for your actual characters in the movie, I like them all. Sam Worthington is the weakest actor of the bunch. When you compare him to Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic, he does not have the same level of charisma, and yet the way this character is written fits perfectly with Sam Worthington's acting capabilities. I don't think Sam Worthington is a truly bad actor. He was one of those actors back in the day that Hollywood tried to make the new leading man, like they did with Jai Courtney and like they did with Taylor Kitsch. And in the case of those two actors, and even Sam Worthington to a certain extent, it didn't really work out, because every other movie after Avatar, Sam Worthington doesn't have charisma, and he seems to play the same character that he does in every movie. The reason why he works so well in Avatar is because he comes in being clueless about the world of Pandora. He is written to basically be the audience. Pardon the pun, but he's pretty much our own Avatar. We get to see the world of Pandora through his eyes, we get to learn about it the way he does, and I really do think that he's good. The storyline is very much the white savior plot, but for some reason with Avatar, it works for me. And I think it works more for me than others because I'm more familiar with the extended edition. We get an alternate opening on Earth and see just how shitty Jake's life was on Earth before heading to Pandora, so it adds more layers to the character on why he'd want to stay there. Because if you watch the theatrical version, you could easily say, oh, he fell in love with Neytiri, or he wants to bang her, that's why he's staying on Pandora and staying with the Na'vi. But when you watch the extended version with that opening, you realize he's not treated with any respect on Earth. He has a shit life and lives in a shit apartment that's much smaller than mine. So, of course this guy'd want to leave. He has a free, functioning pair of legs when he decides to go into his avatar body. So yeah, not the best actor in this movie, but I still really like this character. Sigourney Weaver as Grace Augustine is great as well. I mean, Sigourney Weaver's great in everything she's in, and when you watch the extended edition, there's a lot more depth to her character on why she constantly hates the RDA, why she hates the Marine escort, and why she just kind of has a chip on her shoulder when Jake Sully ends up replacing Tom. It's a subplot involving the Na'vi school that Grace was a teacher at, and we get to see her resentment and her overall heartbreak on why she started out as bitter as she did, but ends up really seeing Jake Sully as a friend. Stephen Lang as Colonel Miles Quaritch is such a highlight. He is so fun as a villain, but he is also sadistic and evil. He is tough, he's authoritative, he doesn't take any shit, and he's even scarier than some of the wildlife on Pandora. The Thanator and the Great Leonopteryx somehow end up being less scary than Quaritch can be at times. He is such an effective villain, and I think the decision to bring him back in The Way of Water was a good one. But the one actor that really stands out to me in this movie is Zoe Saldaña as Neytiri, and her performance in this movie is a performance that I always bring up as an argument for why motion capture should be considered acting. Because again, while visual effects do enhance the motion capture, it's all due to the actors. She's the most interesting character of the movie, and quite frankly, I think it would have been better to follow her rather than Jake Sully, who, again, is good, but Sam Worthington is not as charismatic. Just the scene alone after the destruction of Home Tree and she sees her father die, she delivers a gut-wrenching performance in that one sequence alone that it makes me so angry she didn't get nominated for Best Actress. Like, I really think her performance is that good, and if the Academy would start actually recognizing this type of acting as actual acting, then maybe we could get some actual recognition for these motion capture performances. Another big reason people were excited for this movie was because while this was James Cameron's first movie since Titanic, it was his first action movie since True Lies, and holy crap is the action incredible. It's well shot, you can see everything that's going on, it's exciting, there's not a moment in this movie where you feel bored, it's paced perfectly just like Titanic was. The score by James Horner is fantastic, I think it's right up there with his score for Titanic. The production design is outstanding, the cinematography is beautiful. There's just so many aspects about this movie that just make it as great as it is. And again, I feel like this movie really has been treated unfairly as time went on. Now, that's not to say this movie is void of criticisms. I just feel like the criticisms that I've heard these past 13 years are the same criticisms. Nobody has an original thing to say against this movie outside of nobody remembers it. The plot is just Dances with Wolves or Pocahontas. Nobody likes the characters. Like, it's the same criticisms I hear time and time and time again. And as much as I love this movie, I'm actually gonna lay down some things that I don't like. They might sound like nitpicks, but in comparison to the criticisms I've heard constantly, they're actually original criticisms. Except for this one, unobtainium. That is such a stupid name for a mineral. And when I saw the remastered version back in September, and Giovanni Ribisi first says, "This is what we're here for, unobtainium," the entire theater laughed, including myself, because it's such a ridiculous name that wouldn't be topped until Transformium in Transformers Age of Extinction. So congratulations, unobtainium, you are no longer the dumbest name for a material ever made. As for other criticisms, I do think that there are a few visual effects that don't quite hold up. For example, all the fire effects don't really look convincing to me. There are a few shots in this movie where both Quaritch and Wainfleet are in their amp suits, but their actual movements do not really line up with the CG suits. That's a little jarring. I think some of the sound design for the wildlife on Pandora could be more original. For example, the Thanator has sound effects of the Jurassic Park T-Rex and the 1976 King Kong. Both the Viper Wolf and the Dire Horse have sound effects that are from the Jurassic Park Velociraptors. The Viper Wolf has the hisses and growls of the raptors, while the Dire Horse have the breathing and barks of the raptors. So every time I hear those sound effects, it takes me out of the movie just a smidge, but everything else I think is really good in terms of sound design. And then there are a few scenes in the extended edition that I think could have been integrated more organically, especially the scene near the end of the movie when Sute and Jake finally make peace. Sute accepts Jake Sully as his brother and tells him, "You have to lead the people." It's a really good scene, but I feel like it just kind of slows the movie down a bit. After Neytiri sees Jake Sully in his human form for the first time, we cut to this scene and it kind of stops the movie for a bit. Again, not a bad scene, but it could have been put into the film a little better. However, despite all those criticisms, I still really dig this movie. It's visually amazing, it's paced brilliantly, it's a lot of fun, it gets some real emotional beats out of me. I'd say it's worth seeing in your lifetime. Back in 2009, this would have been my favorite movie of that year, but if I were to do a more updated list, I'd say this would be number 4, right behind Star Trek, District 9, and Up. If you haven't seen this movie since it came out in 2009, and you feel just bitter about it, I recommend you give it another shot, especially the extended version, because James Cameron's extended editions are always better, and I think you might find a little more substance in the extended version. But if you've seen this movie recently and you still don't have good feelings about it, then nothing I say in this review is going to change your mind. I'm just voicing my own thoughts, and for my own money, I still love Avatar. And there you go, that's my review for James Cameron's Avatar, and I'm actually recording this review the day after I saw Avatar: The Way of Water. I cannot review that movie until next week, so check back into this channel December 13th where you will get my full review for the long-awaited sequel. But until then, I want to know what you guys think about Avatar. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.